What were you looking for, dear? Andrea said calmly. At this point, I couldn't form words and mumbled something unintelligible. Your, key, I need to, move your car. Why do you have a box of condoms in your purse? Because? Again, it was said nonchalantly, as if my question was somehow ridiculous. Because why? I began to regain my ability to think and speak. There was a long, pregnant pause before she answered. She creased her face slightly, took a deep breath, and then said, Snap. Well, you don't want me to do it without them, do you? It was as if a truck had come down on me. Staggering, I stepped back and sat down in one of the chairs at the kitchen table. I had no idea what to say, didn't know what to think. All the air had been sucked out of my lungs and I couldn't breathe. Andrea continued, I use protective gear with him all the time. I'm sure he's very clean, but I'm also sure you don't want me bringing home any unwanted germs. And Andrea said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like I was the one being ridiculous, asking why my wife was putting a box of condoms in her purse. Silly me. Now, before I continue, I suppose it would be helpful to tell you a little bit about me, Andrea, and the Stewart family. My name is John L. Stewart. I am 33 years of age. I am married to Andrea P. Stewart, née Layton, and she is the same age as me. We met at the university and were married immediately after graduation. I am a mechanical engineer, and Andrea is a real estate agent. We have 3 beautiful daughters, I've told you about them before, and we live in a very upscale neighborhood in Albany, NY. It's a 2-story colonial home with a 3-car garage, circular driveway, and a pool in the backyard. The house has 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. It's actually much bigger than we needed, but Andrea found it, and it was a good deal at the time, so we bought it. We've lived here for about 3 years now and have had time to get to know the neighborhood and the people who live around us. The schools in the neighborhood are very good, and it's easy for both of us to get to work. All in all, I can say that life has been almost perfect. Almost. If it was perfect, I wouldn't have to work 60 hours a week, and Andrea wouldn't have to work all hours of the day and night and on weekends too. We managed to take care of the kids first and foremost and have dinner together at least 3 times a week. On Sundays, we always get together to do something together and then sit down at the dinner table, eat, talk, laugh, and find out what everyone has done the past week and what's coming up for the next week. For me, the dinner table is one of the hearts of the home. My mother and father taught me that. We would gather around it to eat, discuss business, tell stories and laugh, sort out problems and make plans for the future. That's why when Andrea and I had our conversation, it took place in the kitchen. We ended up sitting around the table. This has nothing to do with you, John. It has everything to do with me. It's just something I need, and it's separate from you and me and our family. Then you'd think the woman saying those words was a complete stranger to the woman I'd been married to for 11 years. The woman with whom I shared a family, a home, a bed. She continued, Don't dwell on it, John. In fact, you can forget about it because it won't affect you in any way. Our lives won't change. Our family hasn't changed. It hasn't affected you in any way. And believe me, honey, it won't affect you in the future either. I took a big breath because I realized I wasn't breathing. Really? Are you serious? I'm supposed to just forget about it? My wife is having fun with some other man and I'm supposed to just forget about it? Oh my God. I exhaled. Breathing is such a tricky thing to remember to do. And you just told me you've been having fun with Rob for 2 years. What the hell, Andrea? She looked at me with an expression that said I was talking nonsense. Honey, you've been very busy with your work and so have I, and the kids are at the stage where their lives demand a lot of our time, so this is just a little thing to take the edge off. She paused to let that bit of wisdom soak in. If you think about it rationally, our sex life is greatly diminished from what it was, but at this stage of life there's nothing we can do about it. She paused again. So what I do doesn't matter to us. It's selfish of me, yes, I admit that. But I get to scratch the itch and come home to you and our daughters and be a good wife and mother. My mouth dropped open as I listened to this nonsense. Wait, you're equating infidelity with being a better wife and mother? I turned my head slightly so I could hear her better. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from the woman I'd been married to for 11 years. Suddenly the room came into motion. and it was as if I was on a ride that was out of control. I fell from my chair to the floor, managing to catch myself with one hand, and then the contents of my stomach unceremoniously came into view. I threw up on the kitchen floor. A moment later, I staggered to my feet and made my way as quickly as I could to the bedroom bathroom to finish the job. I was on my knees trying to regain my composure when Andrea poked her head out from around the corner and pressed her face against the porcelain bowl entrance. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't plan for you to find out this way. I figured it would be better for you not to know. What good will come of it?" She watched me gasp again, then took a face cloth, wiped it under cold water, and handed it to me. I took it and wiped my face and mouth. Slowly, on very wobbly legs, I stood up. I could see the look on her face. She really looked worried. That was the most puzzling thing. That was what I couldn't understand. Who was this woman? What had she done to my wife? Where was the real Andrea? "Honey, I'll take the girls to school and see you after work. I'll make dinner, and then when the girls go to bed, we can have a drink and talk, okay?" Sweat was rolling off my face, and there was no way I could find the words that could in any way express what I wanted to say. I mean, Jesus Christ, I could hear the doors closing and her car starting, so I slowly got up off the bathroom floor, plopped down on the bed, and closed my eyes. I had to concentrate on not trying to throw up anymore. There was nothing left in my intestines to vomit out except maybe what was left of my shattered heart. The rest of the day passed like a blur. I remember calling my boss and telling him I was sick and couldn't make it to the office. I had a few things to reschedule, but nothing that couldn't wait a day or so. The house was quiet and I realized that Andrea and the girls had left. I looked at the clock and realized it was 10 o'clock. I undressed and stood under the hot shower for ages. Maybe half an hour, but my ability to tell time was somehow impaired. I dressed in jeans and a shirt and returned to the kitchen. My earlier endeavors had already been cleaned up. The window was open, and the smell was almost gone. I sat down at the table and stared at him, hoping he would give me some great revelation about what the hell had happened this morning. I started formulating questions. So many things I needed to know, but what I really wanted to do was rewind time. Make the day better by not discovering a box of condoms in my wife's purse. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was better that I didn't know. But now I do know. And she was the one who told me. I felt dizzy again and had to lie down later that day. After trying to lie down and regain some semblance of ability to think, I got up and went back to the kitchen, to the scene of the crime, so to speak. I poured a large glass of ice water, grabbed a notepad and pen. I took 3 extra-strength Tylenol pills and chugged the water, starting to take notes. I'm an engineer and we take notes on everything, at least the important stuff. I was having a hard time concentrating on the damn paper. I started taking notes, but it was incomprehensible gibberish. I tore out the page, rolled it up, and threw it in the corner. I started many paragraphs, but always came back to the main one. What the hell happened to my marriage? I got up, put the notebook aside, and decided that I needed to go outside, get some fresh air, and maybe that would help me clear my head and figure out what to do. I walked for almost 2 hours to the point where I felt faint. I realized that what little I had tried to eat at breakfast had disappeared too suddenly, and I had only had a glass of water since then. I stopped at a diner and managed to stuff myself with a bacon, tomato, and lettuce sandwich, washing it down with a Diet Coke. The food made me feel a little better, and on the way home I did figure out what I wanted to talk to Andrea about. I wanted to know why she had replaced me with her lover and what her plans were for the future. If she was leaving me, I was pretty sure it was going to happen without my daughters. I was determined that they would not be victims here, and that I would fight for them with everything I had. Just because their mother couldn't hold back around men is no reason for my children or me to suffer unnecessarily. I love my wife, at least I used to. I'm not so sure of that now. Where did things go wrong? I've been thinking about the fact that apparently I'm not a good enough husband for her. If that was the case, why was she looking for love with other men? Did she really intend to leave me? Did she intend to take my children? Was the box of condoms in her purse a slip on her part to keep her secret? Or was it an opportunity to put everything out in the open and then make her moves? God, this is driving me crazy. Andrea, I made sure to get home early. I wanted to make a nice dinner and spend time after dinner with the girls and John, family time, all together. When the girls and I arrived, John wasn't home, but his car was parked there. I thought maybe he had gone for a run to think about what we had talked about this morning. I tried to take it a little lightly and make a joke about it, but John wasn't laughing, and his reaction, come to think of it, was pretty normal. I mean, how do you react when your wife says she's having fun with some other man? I probably could have handled it better, but the fact that John had found condoms threw me off balance, and thus out of my feeble attempt at guffawing. I needed to take charge of the situation before things got out of hand, and we ran into problems. When John came home, he was very quiet. He watched me like a hawk circling to pounce on prey. He hardly said anything to me except a muffled grunt and the occasional uh-huh or no. I was wearing some of my tightest jeans and a sleeveless blouse, and I had my hair pinned up the way John liked it. I even spritzed on some perfume that I knew he really liked. I wanted to be attractive to him and let him know that what we needed to talk about was in no way threatening to him. After dinner, the girls did their homework. I cleaned up the kitchen, and then we went outside to get some fresh air and throw baskets in the driveway. John is always up for it, but today he sat inside and didn't say a word as we walked outside. I was really starting to question the decision to indulge my fantasies outside of marriage. It was only once a week and during the day, and I always came home clean. I never let my Thursday indulgences interfere with John and the girls in any way. There were many occasions when I canceled my Thursday. Work, family, and personal reasons sometimes affected what I did. But each time I was sure that my family came first. Thursday was about indulging that itch that needed scratching. It was something that just happened. Rob and I met after I transitioned into real estate agency work. He is married and has a family about the same age as my kids. I found that John and I never had time to be alone together. We almost had to schedule it. That made it really exciting. Now I'm being sarcastic, but I know you think I'm a slut for cheating on my husband. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. John is a great husband and father. He works very hard to provide for his family, and I know he does it with the understanding that if we had to live on his income alone, we could do it. So he treats my income as a bonus, and we keep it in the bank. Most of it went to paying off the mortgage early, some of it went to home improvements, but our savings and investment accounts are fine too. The problem is that with busy careers and 3 busy kids, we don't have time for ourselves. No time to pamper ourselves and connect as a couple, as lovers. We used to be at each other's place almost every night. Now we're lucky, it happens once a week. I need more, and I know John wants more too. It's great. Why do you think we have 3 kids, and we're just past 30 years old? My Thursday indulgence was something I wanted to do to fulfill my needs. I didn't want to make John feel bad by pestering him. Who needs that? I decided a while ago that I needed to do something that would give me what I wanted, but also make sure it didn't affect my family in any way. They do come first, but I figured there was a way to get what I needed and not jeopardize my future. So far, I had been right. But now the challenge was to protect my family and allow me to continue doing what I was doing. That was the challenge. How to make sure my husband didn't feel threatened and that I could continue to have my Thursdays. He walks and you say, sit down. It's just a conversation. Let him know that you know what's best. Andrea. The kids had already gone to bed and now was the perfect time to talk. I pulled some wine out of the fridge, poured some for myself, and brought John his favorite beer. It was an IPA from a local craft brewery. My heart was beating pretty fast, and I had to admit to myself that I didn't have much confidence that this conversation was going to go the way I wanted it to. There was a lot at stake. Honey, sit down. We need to talk. John looked at me sullenly and slowly sat down. I slid a glass of beer over to him. I began. I have to tell you that you have nothing to worry about. I'm not doing anything to affect you or the kids. No matter what you think, you and them come first in my life. John looked at me like I had 2 heads. I continued. Really, darling? That's not what you have to worry about. I'm your wife. I love you very much. Then John objected. Yes, I suppose you do, but do you love me? He was good. Yes, darling. I love you very much. I've loved you ever since I met you, and my love for you has grown stronger every day, and then increased again with each child we have. I am so happy with our life. Our children are perfect, and you are perfect. His mouth was slightly ajar, and when he tried to speak, the words wouldn't come out. He took a small sip to lubricate his throat. So why the hell are you having fun with some other man? I looked at my husband. Well, it's hard to explain, but I guess I have to try. I owe you one. I took a small sip and began. It started with fantasies. Everyone has them. I know you do too. We even talked about some of them. And then it grew. As we got busier and busier. Your work, my work, the girls, life. We spent less and less time with each other. I wanted you so badly it hurt. But I knew it wasn't going to happen. I had an itch that needed scratching. And you weren't always here to scratch it for me. You were busy working, taking the girls to their events. I was busy working. I have a crazy schedule. How many evenings and weekends have I worked and you worked and it kept us from being together? There was a pause. I needed a little drink. So I've come to the conclusion that I need it. I know it might sound ridiculous, but it's what I needed. It calms me down, makes me feel good. Rob can help scratch the itch I need. We only see each other once a week and limit ourselves to an hour or so. It's just enough to get me through the day and week. I can't get enough of you, so I'm replacing it with you. John stared blankly at the table in front of him. I could see he didn't know what to say or do. I continued. Honey, I want nothing more than for you to take me to the bedroom and shake the juices out of me. That's what will make me feel like your wife, your woman. I emphasized the your. In a quieter voice, I said, but I need this for me. Right now and for a while longer until our lives change and we have more time for each other. So please be patient with me and know that I am yours. Completely. And I always will be. I got up from the table, took John's hand, and led him to the bedroom. He walked without saying a word. You think I was a cheating bitch, yet I professed my love for my husband. Well, I guess I have cheated, but I do love my husband. But I need him to give me that a little more time. I need him to give me space to get what I need so I can be an even better wife to him and mother to our children. My happiness has been the key to making me a better wife and mother. On Thursday afternoon, I intended to keep doing this for a while longer. After all, I know what's best. I know this is what I need to do for now. John will understand. He'll let me do this. He loves me enough to understand and let me do it. John. A visit with my lawyer, Roy, a week or so later. Shit. The conversation didn't go well. It started when I discovered an unopened box of condoms in my wife's purse. I was looking for a spare car key. She often carries both car keys in her purse to move the car. Her purse was stuffed with all sorts of junk that takes up women's purses. Finding a box of condoms in there was, well, a million things running through my head at once. While I was looking at the box, Andrea appeared in the kitchen and simply took the box from my hands and put it back in her purse. Roy, I need your help. I continued to explain my situation in excruciatingly detailed detail. Roy nodded, made huck sounds at frequent intervals, and made notes in his yellow notepad. And when I was done, offered, well, John, what can I say? This is a rather unusual story. I work as a divorce attorney and I hear a lot of tragic stories, but this is certainly a new twist. Is $300 an hour what he's good at? I got right to the point. Jesus, Roy, what the hell can I do with this? He replied, what do you want to do with it? And there it was. What the hell am I going to do about my wife and her boyfriend? Then he got serious for a moment, then continued. First off, as your lawyer, I can tell you that my first piece of advice is don't do anything stupid. Don't get into a fight with anyone and don't threaten them with physical violence. In New York State, the courts look down on that, and you'll end up in a jail cell. And we don't want that, do we? No, we certainly don't want that. A jail cell didn't solve any of my problems. I mean, I have to do something about it. I can't just let it go on. So, Roy, what are my options? Well, there are many things you can do, but I have to be honest with you, they all suck. I was stunned at such a frank admission coming from the mouth of a seasoned 50-year-old divorce attorney in a suit and vest. What are you talking about? Roy acquired an even more serious expression on his face, if such a thing is possible for a man like him who lives and breathes nasty divorce cases. Supposedly, he was the best in the neighborhood, and he wasn't cheap. But Roy wasn't being realistic. Given that I was only 34, had 3 daughters and a career that was growing and had excellent prospects, Now was not the time to blow it. So, Roy outlined the options available to me. His crash course in divorce was deeply depressing. In New York State, there are essentially 7 different grounds for divorce. He went on to list them. 1. Cruel and inhuman treatment. 2. Abandonment of the plaintiff by the defendant for 1 or more years. 3. The defendant's incarceration for 3 or more consecutive years after the marriage. 4. Defendants committing voluntary adultery with a person other than plaintiff after the marriage. 5. Separation pursuant to a decree or judgment of separation for 1 or more years after the entry of such decree or judgment. 6. Separation pursuant to a written separation agreement signed by the parties for 1 or more years after the agreement is signed. And 7. The relationship between husband and wife has irretrievably deteriorated for a period of at least 6 months, provided that one of the parties so states under oath. So what the hell was I supposed to do? Number 4. The adultery provision, on the face of it, was the number 1 solution to my little problem. Let's put a pencil mark next to that clause for now and look at the others. Living separate and apart for a year is probably the way to go. Let's put a pencil mark next to numbers 5 and 6 for now. Number 7 was one of the most common reasons in divorces in this state. Roy said he made a lot of money on it. Unless I do something stupid like beat the crap out of Rob or run away from my wife and family to a Caribbean island, there doesn't seem to be an easy solution to the cheating wife problem. Number 7 is the no-fault position, which is the way out for one or the other person when they don't want to stay in the marriage. But at first glance, it seems that number 4 on the list of reasons for divorce above is my top candidate, at least for now. But not so fast, Roy thinks. My boy, the real devil in all this is that you have 3 kids. I assume you want to be a full-time father, not a part-time one? I looked at Roy with a puzzled expression on my face that said, "What are you really saying?" "Well, of course I want to be a full-time father. That's my main reason for coming to you." Roy nodded sagely again and answered me with a nope. "What I'm saying, John, is that right now, after the divorce, all you're going to accomplish is to turn into a part-time father, living alone most of the time and without the financial resources you have now, unless, of course, you start earning a lot more than you are now." I sat there, stunned, as if I'd been punched in the head by Mike Tyson. One of those punches that makes you lose consciousness and spin in place, about to fall over. You can't tell which way is up or left or right. Good thing I was already sitting up. After drinking water and regaining the ability to form more than 2 syllables, I managed to look at my memorized lawyer and asked, "Jesus, Roy, what the hell are you telling me?" My eyes bulged, and I could feel the veins in my neck swelling. My blood pressure was approaching stroke level. In his calm and very controlled voice, looking at me over his glasses, he summed it up. "Well, John, I don't want to be too harsh, but I would be less than honest with you if I told you anything other than the godlike honest truth." He paused and swallowed before continuing. "You're screwed, my boy." My mouth was open, and my jaw muscles were suddenly unable to function enough to close my mouth. As those words sunk into the depths of my soul, I realized how death row inmates must feel as they approach the final hour, waiting only to meet their executioner. This grim realization swept over me. To think that my cheating wife was going to get the better of me. Well, the room seemed to revolve around some unknown axis, and for the next few minutes everything was a blur. Time froze, sped up, and froze in place. I had no idea what it was doing. The next thing I knew, Roy was standing on one side of me and his secretary Shirley on the other. She was holding a bottle of water, offering it to me. Water for a drowning man. Perhaps I was in a desert. It might as well have been Mars. Maybe I'll see one of those expensive Mars rovers and regain my sanity. Or maybe I'll just drown. Or maybe... who knows? I breathed into the brown paper bag, trying to regain my ability to breathe normally. I think I was suffocating from hyperventilation. I took the water bottle, drank almost all of it in one big gulp, and returned the empty bottle to Shirley. When I regained my ability to breathe normally, as well as my ability to think logically, I looked at Roy and revisited the 7 reasons for divorce in New York. "So, why don't I seriously consider number 4 on your nice list, Roy? I mean, my wife has been getting it from another man for some time now. She even admitted it to me in our kitchen, for goodness sake. Why shouldn't I force this shit show because of her infidelity? It's really all on her conscience, not mine. Roy nodded at me, and his face said several things at once without needing to say any words. But then he did speak. I wouldn't want Roy to have to represent me in criminal court. I mean, how convincing a defense can be if your lawyer shrugs and grimaces at the jury and expects them to know what that means. No. Roy was good at the divorce game, so I'll stick with that, using him as my spokesman. John, I don't mean to be too rude, but really, all you'll accomplish is handing Andrea your house, most of the furnishings, and most importantly, your children and control of the agenda. In very short, you will get screwed in the divorce, and then she will get money from you to go screw more other men. And the saddest part is that eventually your kids will wake up in the morning and one of your ex-wife's boyfriends will be sitting at the breakfast table. He will chat with them as if he is their father, and gradually they will start to forget that you are their father, and you'll be paying for all of this. Oh my God, I couldn't realize what a nightmare he had just described. It was the worst outcome imaginable. I would have preferred to just shoot myself in the head so my children would forget me. But if I did that, they would forget me even faster. Hell, no. In that very moment, I firmly decided that this staggeringly awful shit show Roy had just described was not going to be my fate, nor the fate of my 3 daughters. No way in hell. So Roy, please tell me there is another scenario where I won't suffer the loss of my daughters other than a weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. I mean, really, what can I realistically do to remain the father I am now and want to remain? It really sucks. You know what I'm trying to say? So clumsily? Roy sighed heavily. John, I understand exactly what you want, and I'd be a bad legal advisor if I didn't advise you, my boy, on the best plan to stay the master in this unfortunate situation. So listen carefully. And then he went on, describing in great detail what he thought was a realistic plan of action for me to deal with Andrea, keep my children safe, and do all of this without leaving the house. He also detailed the 7 reasons he had listed earlier for divorce and how none of them would get me what I wanted. He had a different plan that he said would accomplish almost everything I wanted, given my priorities. Roy's plan was very simple. Do nothing. That's right. Do nothing. Continue to be married to Andrea and continue to be the best father I could be. Continue to enjoy my family and the closeness I shared with my wife. To ignore as much as possible what she was saying in the kitchen and move on with my life. Andrea said her extramarital sex had nothing to do with us, so why not believe that and continue to enjoy my relationship with my wife? You think Roy is an incredibly incompetent lawyer, and I'm a damn fool for believing him, don't you? Well, that's how I reacted too. How could I look at myself in the mirror in the morning without being disgusted that I was putting up with her cheating? What the hell had my marriage and my life become? Roy let his sage advice take a moment to comprehend, then cleared his throat, sipped some water, and continued. I know you must believe that I'm not a very good divorce lawyer, but from my vast experience, I can tell you that in your situation, you will lose, and you will lose far more than you will gain. You may be able to fix your wife's infidelity, but you will lose your children, your home, your financial future, and most importantly, your happiness. The old bastard waited a moment longer before continuing his lecture on loss. I know this seems very unfair to you, and frankly, it is extremely unfair. But divorce happens legally. The court tends to give custody to the mother. I know what you're thinking. Infidelity should be a factor for the court to consider, but it usually isn't. Roy looked saddened by this fact. It was as if he was personally offended by the state of affairs in New York State divorce law. I'm sure many of his clients would like infidelity to be taken into account in matters such as child custody and home. But it isn't. I decided to sigh again. So, Roy, let me rack my feeble brain. Andrea is divorcing other men for her own pleasure, and there's nothing I can do about it. And if I divorce her, she'll be laughing all the way home when she takes the kids away from me, our house, and will probably have to pay to maintain her lifestyle. I wasn't sure if I was questioning what I had just heard, or if I was summarizing it in some way that nicely brought it all together for easy understanding. In my small, lizard-like brain, I knew I was screwed. I had wasted 11 years of my life on a woman who must be laughing at me every day, at least every time she had fun with her boyfriend, Rob. What if I just kick her to the curb? After all, if I admitted to doing it with other women, she'd go ballistic and try to kick me out of the house. Why can't I try to do the same to her? Wouldn't the court treat me sympathetically in that case? Roy nodded his head sagely and replied, "Well, John, you can certainly try. I know it's been tried before, and I must report that on the whole it hasn't been a great success. You see, your wife, Andrea, will argue in court that your forcible removal of her from the house deprives her of her right to be with the children. She will try to argue that her custody rights have been denied unfairly, without good cause, and therefore she and her attorney will petition the court to regain custody of the children. The courts in New York State are firmly on the side of the mothers. Of course, there are requirements that a mother meet certain standards, and unless you have very clear evidence that Andrea is an unfit mother, I have to tell you that any attempt to deny her access to her home and children will likely be unsuccessful." Roy pondered this for a few moments before continuing. I sat still, my brain on edge. What the hell was I going to do? If I left, I would lose my kids, my house, most of my income and future. Also, Andrea could have fun with as many men as she wanted and do it in my house. Even when my kids are in the house. Shit. The other thing is, I can't make Andrea leave the house. All she has to do is hire a lawyer to go to a judge and get an order allowing her to return to the house. All that would do is make me the bad guy in the eyes of the court. Any judge, especially a female judge who is also a mother, would likely overlook the fact that I'm trying to deny Andrea access to the kids. No, that's not going to work. So what the hell am I supposed to do? I looked up and saw Roy's mouth moving, but I had no idea what he was saying. Eventually, I heard, John, do you understand what I'm telling you?" I shook my head. "I'm sorry, Roy, but I didn't hear what you just said." He looked at me with his stern but fatherly look, and I believe he repeated, "My advice, John, is to go home and forget that your wife told you about any extramarital affairs on her part. If you can't just put it out of your mind, then I suggest you see a marriage counselor and work out an agreement that best meets your needs. If a marriage counselor can't do the job, I may be able to help draw up a post-marital agreement that will suit both you and Andrea and allow both of you to stay in the house, and more importantly, with the children." That was it. Nothing to do. And if I can't live with doing nothing, make a written agreement that allows my wife to continue to have fun with other men. Because if I can't do one of those two things, the alternative will do no good for anyone, especially my kids and me. Jesus. I went back to my office, closed the door, and sat alone, drowning my sorrows in a bottle of ice water. I pondered Roy's memorized words and tried to imagine how I would live with this new thing. I took huge breaths and held them for a few seconds before letting them out. Andrea and I needed to talk. Again. I don't know when we'll do it, but we will. Maybe a few times. Week 1. Life in our house was almost as normal as it had always been. All 3 girls were busy with school, sports, and their individual activities. I didn't have time to reflect on the fact that the relationship between me and their mother had changed dramatically last week. My marriage was now different. It didn't have the feeling I'd had for the first 13 years. It was a new deal. I wasn't sure if Andrea thought things had changed for her when her desires and intentions became public. My 3 daughters, Laura, age 6, Matilda, age 8, and Diana, age 11, were unaware of the new dynamic between me and their mother. As far as they knew, life in the Stewart household had not changed, at least not yet. Andrea acted as if nothing had changed and nothing had been said between us. She greeted me at the door with a kiss on the lips and her usual warmth and concern. She asked me how my day at work was and shared what she herself was doing. She took care of the kids as usual. Sometimes she cooked and did some housework. It was all surprisingly normal. It was as if there was no revelation that once a week she had fun with another man for an afternoon. When she came home, she looked normal, smelled normal, acted normal. What the hell is this? Was I really dreaming this whole thing? Was I really just being an ignorant John? Week 2. Thursday night, Diane played soccer. Her team practices once a week, usually Thursday night at 7, and they have a game on Saturday morning at 10. It's a team for 10 and 11-year-olds. Laura and or Matilda usually come to practice with me, and the whole family goes to the games. Right after the game, Matilda goes to ballet. I had gotten used to Andrea not going to practice. She had things to do at work and I didn't think about it anymore. But this Thursday was different. It was the time Andrea would spend with Rob, her lover of the past 2 years. They would hang out at his house, usually in the afternoon or after work. They left work early, and spend an hour or two together. Andrea would take a shower before going home, and then she would say hello to the girls and talk about soccer and school and anything else the girls wanted to talk about. But now I knew. I knew that my wife was no longer my wife. She was now partially someone else's. She was dividing her life between her family and her lover, Rob. The realization of this was slowly creeping into my thinking brain. My rational brain was realizing that things had changed. The emotional brain was catching up with it. The emotional brain was searching for the vast gulf between Andrea, my loving wife and mother of my 3 children, and Andrea, the cheating whore who was having fun with another man and trying to make it seem like it was okay. I'd never met Rob, and I didn't really want to meet him. I was afraid I would lose control and do something stupid that would get me in trouble with the police and land me in jail. It would make my life a living hell. Not that it wasn't already. The words of my lawyer, Roy, kept coming back to me. Don't do anything stupid, John. Week 3. Every morning I went to work with a knot in my gut. I had to really concentrate on what I was doing at work. My boss, Ron Walton, noticed that I often didn't pay attention to what was going on around me. He is a really nice guy, and in many ways is a father figure and mentor to me. He invited me in for coffee, and in his very calm manner tried to get me to tell him what was bothering me. I practically dodged the question, but Ron wasn't going to put up with it so quickly. John, you haven't been yourself lately. Whatever it is, I have to be honest with you that it's starting to affect your work. You're making little mistakes you wouldn't normally make. Others manage to spot them before you screw up something serious, but damn it, you've got to get back in the game, bud. That was the way it was, plain and simple. I exhaled and looked at the cup of coffee in my hand. I'm sorry, Ron. I know I haven't been putting my best foot forward these past few weeks. I exhaled again. I have a personal problem I'm trying to deal with. I don't know what to do about it, and yes, it's affecting my work. I'm going to pull my head out of my ass and promise to get better. He looked at me with genuine concern. John, whatever it is, I'll do my best to help. All you have to do is ask. Okay, if you need time to work on it, just say the word, and it's yours. You're a good guy, and I want you to be part of the team, so if you need anything from me, just name it. He got up to leave and put his hand on my shoulder. I mean it, whatever you need. He left me to think for a while. I knew that Andrea and her revelations about her extramarital relationship with her lover had affected me to the point where I was having trouble sleeping, concentrating on work, and just functioning. I might not be able to get her to end the affair, but I had to do something for myself. I had to keep my sanity and focus on what was important. I kept thinking about my 3 daughters. I went back to Roy. I asked him to start working on the post-nuptial agreement he and the marriage counselor had been talking about. What did I have to lose? Week 4. Today is Tuesday, and I got home around 6 o'clock. Andrea was home, and I figured today would be a good time to talk to her. The kids were doing their homework at the dining room table, and Andrea was in the kitchen making something to eat. She is a good cook and tries to make sure we all eat sensibly. Today was meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green peas. One of the kids' favorite meals. After we ate and put away the dirty dishes, I sent the girls out to the backyard to chase a soccer ball. There was no practice or class today, and Andrea didn't tell me she had to go back to work. I went out and played with the kids. The feeling of gloom that had gripped my brain was slowly passing, and I decided to take control of the situation and do something to at least make me feel better about the fact that Andrea had honestly told me a month ago that a lover on the side was what she needed, and that she would continue to make sure that her family always came first in her life. Her devotion to me and the kids is truly admirable. Yes. Once the kids went to bed, I went to the fridge, pulled out a bottle of Andrea's favorite white wine and got myself an IPA. I poured them and set them on the dining room table. This is exactly what Andrea had done a few weeks ago when we had our conversation. I made my way to our home office, where she was doing something on her laptop, and stood in the doorway. Andrea, would you please come out to the dining room? We have something we need to discuss. She turned her head and looked at me. I turned and walked away. A minute later, she came out and I was already sitting at the table. When she sat down, she looked a little pale, and I slid the wine glass over to her. You might want this. Andrea took the glass and took a small sip. What do you want to talk about, sweetheart? I took a small sip of my beer and began. A few weeks ago, you surprised the hell out of me by admitting that you were having fun with another man. Since then, you've told me that you intend to continue. I have to be brutally honest with you and tell you that I still can't get the idea of sharing you with another man off my mind. You don't share me with anyone, John. I'm your wife, and you're my husband. That's all there is to it. What I do once a week with Rob is strictly outside of our marriage. It's purely recreational. It's no different than you playing racquetball with someone other than me. She took another sip. I realize you look at it that way, but I look at it differently. For me, it's about intimacy, which I think should only be between you and me. She started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. Let me finish, please. She took another sip. I went to 2 different people to get them to help me deal with this problem, and I have to tell you that a big part of me wishes you had never told me you were having fun with this guy. You mean Rob? Yeah, him? Are there other men? I've never asked you that. Do you have more than one boyfriend? No, honey. He's the only one. Were there others before him? No, darling. I looked at the large gray envelope on the table that held the document Roy had prepared. I took a big gulp and exhaled, mentally marking that I needed to have my children's DNA tested to find out if I was really their father. Who knows? Maybe she was lying to me. What's in the envelope, honey? I went to see my lawyer, Roy. You know him. The expression on Andrea's face immediately became very serious, and she turned even more pale. I went to him and to a marriage counselor. Both of them recommended some kind of written agreement between us that would give us both some kind of guardrail for our marriage. The marriage counselor told me that more and more couples are using these kinds of agreements to bring out many things that remain unspoken between them. When I first started reading about it, I was shocked at how specific this kind of thing can be. It says a lot of things that we don't really talk about. I sipped another beer. I wasn't sure a relationship agreement was what we needed, and I wasn't at all sure Andrea would go for it either. But honestly, I didn't know what else to do other than stick my head in the proverbial sand and ignore everything she was doing. But could I really do that? Could I just ignore what she was doing with another man? I knew that eventually it would fester and eat away at me to the point where I would just lose my temper and do something stupid, like try to kick her out on the street or hurt her and him in some way. I let Roy and the marriage counselor convince me that using this relationship agreement as a tool to make Andrea understand the impact her behavior was having on our marriage would give her a reason to reconsider her desires. Will she decide to end her affair or leave me and the children? A third course of action for her would be to accept the arrangement and continue to exist as she has been. If she wanted to choose the third option, it would have more serious consequences, which she would see later. This relationship agreement unfortunately provides for a third party in the relationship. For Andrea, it allows her to have her boyfriend Rob over on a regular basis, but it also requires her to be honest with me and tell me about her actions. I have to agree that I will not be nervous or do anything that will interfere with her and him. The flip side of that agreement is that I can do the same thing. What we both do has consequences, and this is one of them. So, I had a marriage counselor draft this document, and then had Roy review it to make sure it was fair for both of us. Andrea looked at me, then at the envelope, and then took a sip of wine. Her eyes widened a little, and her expression was surprised. I continued. Since you've told me that you need more than I can give you, I'm concerned about our family situation. I want to make sure that the girls will be at the forefront of our thoughts in the decisions we make as individuals and as a couple. They deserve it, and they are my top priority, regardless of what else is going on with us. Andrea took another sip. John, you're scaring me a little. Is this your way of saying you want a divorce? Oh no, quite the opposite, dear. I want us to stay married. I don't want to lose you. I love you very much and I want to continue to love you. I just want to make sure the girls are protected no matter what we do. I paused. Not because of any dramatic need, but to get a drink. I needed it to keep going. I know things are a little different for you, but if you agree, I want this agreement for both of us to set some rules. Fences, if you will. within which we must operate so that the girls have a mother and father and see that we are just that. I want them to have a stable family to grow up in. The expression on Andrea's face brightened a little. I was a little worried that you were telling me you wanted a divorce. You know that I love you. You know that girls and you are the first thing I think about all the time? I wondered how she could put family at the top of her priority list on Thursdays when her boyfriend Rob was entertaining her. It didn't make any sense at all. I looked her straight in the eye. Thank you. After another short pause, I continued, pointing to the envelope. So, this is a draft relationship agreement. I want you to look at it and tell me if it's reasonable. Everything here is negotiable. Everything is subject to change. We just have to go with what is. Andrea frowned slightly. Do you really think we need a written agreement to govern our marriage? We've gotten along just fine without one for the last 11 years and 3 children. I looked at my wife with square eyes. Ever since you told me about Rob and your intention a month ago, I thought we better set some ground rules. If you want to keep seeing him or anyone else, and if you want me to keep agreeing to it, then I think we need to make sure our marriage pays attention to the things that give us stability. I can't just sit here and not say anything that lets you know that I'm worried about us, about our future as a couple and as a family. I just can't not do something to protect what we have. Andrea. Oh my God. I had no idea John felt so threatened by what I'm doing to Rob. It has nothing to do with him. I didn't take anything away from us to give to Rob. Rob is just sex. Mindless, yes. But he's good for me. I tried to brush it off like it shouldn't mean anything to him. And I didn't want it to mean anything to him. I wanted him not to think about it at all. I'm John's wife. I love him. And that's it. Now it's all starting to get out of hand. I know that for the last month John has been taking it easy on me. I thought that once he got over it, we would go back to normal. I know that for the past month we have not had any intimacy. I knew right away that the only time he didn't touch me was when we were with the kids, and that was only to a minimal degree. Oh shit, we haven't had contact in a month. What the hell does that mean? Is he afraid of me? Is he pulling away from me? Is he distancing himself from our marriage? Is this all just a clue to get me out the door? Oh my God, I need to take action now before this gets out of hand. What the hell is this relationship agreement he's made? John. So, Andrea, I want you to go over this and then we need to discuss it. I want us to agree on everything before we decide to live by this agreement. What do you think? John, I don't need some piece of paper to say I love you and our daughters. I looked at Andrea. And you know I never thought I needed some piece of paper to say I love you. But when you brought another man into your life and mine, everything changed. I let that sink in a little and took a sip of my beer. I need to know a few things, including your long-term intentions. Do you plan to eventually replace me with a new guy? Do you want to move on at some point? This connection you have with Rob really confuses me, honey. Part of me says that you feel like I'm not good enough for you anymore. I'm not satisfying you enough. Oh, John, no, it's not that at all. We've talked about this before. Rob is just what I need to scratch an itch that is just there. And we have so much to do as a couple and a family that it just doesn't get touched. That's why it happens during the day. I scratch the itch and then I clean myself up and go home to my real life and family. I have never, not once, thought about wanting a different life than the one I have with you and the girls. I even thought we should have more kids. That surprised the hell out of me. What? I sipped my drink. A million thoughts raced through my brain in an instant. You want more kids? I think it's entirely possible. We need to talk about it, but what's wrong with our family getting bigger? You and I love children. Our daughters are the center of our lives. Have you ever thought about a son? This statement from Andrea that we should have a 4th child took me by surprise. I mean, when are she, going to find time to have another child? She was already very busy with her real estate agent job, and then there are 3 kids. How is she going to handle being pregnant? Wait, is that her way of saying she's already pregnant? Shit. Was Rob, who scratched his teeth on Thursday afternoons, the father? When do you want to have a baby? We can start any time. Hell, as soon as now. Let's go. Andrea set her wine glass aside, took my hand, and pulled me toward our bedroom. Today wasn't Thursday, so I wouldn't have to carve out a few seconds. Next day. At breakfast, I told Andrea to take the relationship agreement envelope with her and look it over. I still had a few things I wanted to sort out before she went on with her Thursday activities. I wanted her to realize that this could have some consequences, that we couldn't just pretend we had an open marriage and everything would be fine. Nope. Relationship agreement. This document is the relationship agreement between Andrea Stewart and John Stewart. It goes into effect on the date they mutually sign it and sets the tone of their marriage and relationship between them. And most importantly, the rules they agree to live by for the betterment of the marriage, given that they have 3 children, and that they both recognize and agree that the welfare of the children comes before all other considerations in their marriage. Both Andrea and John agree that the result of any breach of this agreement will not necessarily result in the termination of their marriage and relationship, but will mean that this agreement must be renegotiated and some action taken to correct their individual behavior, or they will both agree to modify this agreement. The items in this agreement are not necessarily in order of importance and do not include everything that makes up the relationship or marriage, but are listed to call attention to them and give them some importance to the relationship. We agree to never threaten the relationship in passing, during disagreements, in arguments, or in the presence of our children, families, or others. Serious disagreements will be discussed privately between the two of us. We agree to take responsibility for our individual emotional reactions, our fears and anxieties, and for ourselves in general. We agree to consciously take time for ourselves as individuals, whether alone, with friends, including on separate vacations if we agree to do so. We agree to have a weekly date night with no distractions, no cell phones. We agree to maintain a growth orientation, remaining patient with ourselves and each other, and not expecting growth to happen in any specific time frame. This recognizes the need to be aware of the career aspirations and needs of others. We agree to invest heavily in self-care to be able to bring our best selves to our relationships. We recognize that each of us has a responsibility to be as healthy and fit as possible, and to ensure that physiological problems do not affect the other. In addition, while we are in any relationship outside of each other, we agree to be tested regularly for possible sexually transmitted diseases and to report test results to each other as soon as we receive them. We recognize that we do not necessarily make each other happy. Rather, we bring our individual happiness to the relationship that we can share with each other. We agree to tell each other the whole truth, even if it is difficult to do so. We agree to consider that the other partner always has our best interests at heart. We agree to allow space for 3 separate entities in our partnership: you, me, and the other relationship. We agree to spend 1 day a week together when the phones are off and we can be fully present with each other. This is separate from date night. We agree to do this with each other at least once every 2 weeks. We agree to accept and respect any emotions that come from each other and promise to do our best not to take these displays of emotion personally. We agree to de-escalate our arguments with "time out, I love you" whenever one or both of us feel we have gone too far down the rabbit hole of defensiveness, feeling neglected or scared. We agree to love and cherish every emotional breakthrough we have and honor every tear that needs to be worked through in the safe space of our relationship. We agree to keep all of our birthday, anniversary, and holiday gifts under $200. And we agree to do our best to fulfill, to the best of our ability, all of the intentions set forth in this agreement, and will be patient and loving with ourselves and each other when we inevitably stumble. This agreement is an expression of intentions and commitments to each other. It is not all-inclusive and is subject to change through discussion and agreement between Andrea and John. This relationship agreement does not limit our commitment to each other. Our signatures below confirm our intentions and commitments. John Stewart. Andrea Stewart. Week 5. Andrea. This relationship agreement was a stupid idea. I don't know why John listened to the lawyer and the marriage counselor. Neither of them knew me. I had met old Roy once, but I had never met a marriage counselor. She was a woman, and apparently she thought I could be cornered with this document she helped draft. I didn't need some agreement to help me manage my marriage to John. John was mine, and I was his, plain and simple. We have children, and we are a family, plain and simple. We stay together, plain and simple. And I'll sit with John this weekend and we can talk about it. I'm not living under some ridiculous written agreement that will tell me what I can and can't do. Week 6. John. On Sunday, Andrea made a frontal attack and refused to sign the relationship agreement I had given her to look at 2 weeks ago. We talked about it, and I asked her to make any changes she felt were necessary. I told her I wanted it to be something that reminded us of our responsibilities in marriage. Also, if we are going to involve other people in our lives, we need to be very clear about what is acceptable and what is not. Andrea finally realized this. She realized that being able to have fun outside of marriage was a two-way street. If she could do it, so could I. Week 10. John. Work and life are slowly killing me. I have very little time to do anything for myself. I need to get out for a run and blow off some steam. My stress level is slowly rising, and I need to do something to get it under control. My home life has been tepid, to say the least. My attempt to get Andrea to agree to a relationship agreement started slowly. Eventually, after some back and forth between us, she, grudgingly, came to an agreement. It was significantly shortened from the original document that Roy had drafted for me. The agreement stated that in our marriage, we would each be able to have extramarital affairs, as long as they did not interfere with the marriage and our family. There was to be no emotional aspects or romantic relationships. If that were to happen, it would mean the end of the marriage, and then the real struggle would begin. I calmly went back to Roy, informed him of the new agreement, and asked him to put together a contingency plan in case the marriage fell apart, so I could fight for custody of the girls. He is in the process of doing just that now. Week 12. Andrea. My Thursday itch-scratching sessions are still going on, and I plan to continue them for a while longer. John and I are starting to have fun again. We had a break for about 3 months. It was a terrible time. I actually need my husband more than he realizes. He thinks I don't love him, but I do. He loves me. I know it. That's why he went to all the trouble to visit a lawyer and marriage counselor to draw up this ridiculous relationship agreement. I guess he could try to force me out of the house, but he knows that would only hurt the girls and cause a bunch of problems. No, I don't have to worry about that. What I do have to worry about, though, is making sure my husband is well aware of how much I love him. John is wonderful. He's a great husband and a great father. What more do I need? Besides, my Thursdays are taking care of all the worries of our lives, so far things are going well. Week 16. John. I decided a while back that I needed to do something fun for myself, separate from my family. I ran a lot at university and for a while after, but then life and family got in the way. I decided I wanted to try my hand at kayaking and cycling. I did some research and found some local clubs that held meetings and had a good database of lakes, rivers, and trails. I bought a Trek mountain bike and a 13-foot-long sit-on-top kayak. It has both a handlebar and skeg to give it stability and maneuverability. I took 2 kayaking lessons to get the hang of it and started biking in the mornings and on weekends. On Sunday, we planned a family outing with a hike and picnic. Just as we were getting ready, Andrea got a call from a client saying she was canceling at the last minute. The girls and I went without her. We drove my old Subaru Outback, and I let Diane sit in the front. She is big enough to sit in the front. She is so mature for her age. We walked for about 3 hours to get to the lookout on the mountain. I got out my nice Nikon camera, and all the girls were able to take pictures. We had lunch, and then headed back to the parking lot. We got caught in the rain on the way down the hill, but we had brought our jackets with us, so it was no big deal. By the time we got home, it was 7 o'clock. Andrea was already waiting for us. She had changed into jeans and a blouse and made dinner. We had a very nice family dinner, and the girls were proudly showing off their pictures on the old laptop we had specially made for this purpose. The girls were tired after a day of being outdoors and exercising, so it didn't take long for them to argue about revising their homework for school, wash up, and go to bed. Soon after 9 o'clock, they were sound asleep. Week 17. Andrea. Last Thursday, I was comparing John to Rob. I have fun with Rob for reasons other than love. I can control Rob so easily to get what I want. My husband is a different matter. He and I are a team. I don't so much take control away from him as I share it. We both have things we're good at, and we divide the work of starting a family between us so that everything gets done with the minimum of fuss. For the most part. We're not perfect, no matter how you slice it, but we do all the important things we should do first and then plan the fun stuff later. Sometimes the simple facts of life get in our way and there isn't as much fun as we'd like. A side relationship with Rob fixes an itch that John can't fix. And when that night comes during the week, who has the strength? Damn it. So I need Rob. Thursdays, I come home happy and greet my husband and kids with a smile on my face. Thursdays give me a boost of energy for the week. Then I get back to the reality of life, family, work, and other things that need to be done. I can't wait for the weekend when John and I can have some fun. Week 22. John. My cycling group is organizing a weekend ride. The ride starts about an hour out of town and follows several trails and roads outside of town. I plan to go and have already signed up. They will have dinner Saturday night and a big meetup afterward. Probably a lot of people will have a beer or two. I've been trying to stay away from alcohol for the last few months, both to cut down on extra calories and to keep my emotions in check. When you are angry or upset, alcohol is not your friend. So it's best to stay away from it and keep your composure. Overall, my fitness level has increased significantly. I still run almost every day, and adding biking has really increased my leg strength. I noticed that my pants were getting tighter than they used to, so I purchased several new pairs of pants designed for a more athletic build. There are about 100 people signed up for the bike ride this weekend, so it should be a great time. Andrea. John is spending more and more time outdoors mountain biking and kayaking. He gets up at 5 a.m. and runs for over an hour before showering and getting ready for work. His breakfast consists of fruit, yogurt, and a cup of coffee. I walk the kids to the school bus stop and then head to work. John is usually here when the kids get home, or they go to a neighbor's house. We've made a deal with them that the girls can go there for an hour or so until John or I get home. This weekend, John is going on a group trip somewhere out of town. He told me he's leaving on Friday and will be home around 7 or 8 on Sunday. On Wednesday, a new bike was delivered here. It was brought in from a bike store. I was here when the guy brought it to the front door. It's red. That's about all I know about bicycles. When John got home, he dropped everything he was doing, changed into his riding clothes, and went straight out on it. An hour later when he returned, he was smiling and raving about what a great bike it was. John, I had a great time this weekend. My new Trek Marlin 6 is a fantastic bike. The pace was very fast and the terrain just killed me. I was sweating like a dog. Do dogs sweat? And a couple times I started to cramp up when I exerted myself hard. I flipped over on one of the turns, but luckily both me and the bike only got away with minor scratches. Sunday morning I got a flat tire. The support truck was nearby and I quickly fixed it and got back on the bike. Saturday for dinner was a buffet at the hotel where we were all staying, and afterward there was a bonfire. I had a beer. It was a chance to talk to many of the people I see at the weekly meetings and share stories about the rides. I met Jane and her sister Judy. Or Judy and her sister Jane. Either way, they are both in their 30s and very good at riding. Judy lives with her boyfriend who works for a company that makes skateboards and sells them to dealers. She said that they are actually made in China, painted in a warehouse in some part of the US, and then shipped to retail stores and sold online. Jane pointed out that this guy was a little off his rocker. Judy looked at her sister glumly. Judy is an elementary school teacher. Jane is an aspiring lawyer working in one of the firms in town. She is single again since her marriage broke up 2 years ago. One day a guy decides that it's not Jane he wants, but something else. She didn't say anything of the sort, but if I understand correctly, she made a mistake marrying him, and the divorce is to correct the mistake. Aren't all divorces about righting a wrong? Anyway, I enjoyed the weekend, especially getting to know Jane and Judy, especially Jane. Week 25. John. Now that fall is almost here. It is getting cooler at night. The kids are going back to school. My work is filling up with new projects. I discover that the law firm my company uses is the same one Jane works for. Her full name is Jane Francis. I also learned that she is doing a rotation in contract law. I saw her at a meeting in the building where my office is located. She spotted me walking by the conference room they were using and waved at me. I caught the edge of her eye and for a second I didn't recognize her. She looked completely different in a light brown business suit with her hair gathered in a bun, as opposed to a biker suit and her hair gathered in a ponytail. She had light makeup on her face, and I was immediately struck by how gorgeous she looked. She cleaned up really well. I wrote a short note. If you have time, I am in the office on the 4th floor. just ask for me, and can treat you to a delicious lunch, a sandwich and coffee from the 4-star coffee shop downstairs. I also wrote my work phone number on the note. As quietly as possible, I opened the conference room door, walked in, and placed the note in front of Jane. She looked at me over her shoulder and I left without interrupting the meeting. An hour or so later, I heard a knock on the open door, and there she stood. So, I heard from a reliable source, she waved a note, that a girl can get a sandwich and something to wash it down with nearby. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and smiling said, "The tuna sandwich is especially good, and if you don't like tuna, they have egg salad, which is just great." On the way to the deli, I complimented Jane on the fact that she looked different than usual when I see her in her cycling clothes. Lunch was spent chatting with 2 cyclists I know. A couple of people I work with stopped by for food, and I noticed them peering at us to see if anything was going on. I was sorry to disappoint them. Week 27. The cycling club held their last event of the year. It was a 100-mile one-day race. It was mostly roads, but about 15 miles was off-road. Most of the roads were dirt, so with those conditions in off-road, you were guaranteed to finish with several pounds of mud stuck to you and your bike. I came off the course 4 times, so along with the mud, I had to deal with a few scrapes and abrasions. Nothing sanitizes open wounds like mud. The bike behaved very well and never once had a flat tire. I made a mental note to look for a more competitive bike next year. It might be lighter, but lighter means more expensive, and I'm not ready to spend the price of a small car on a mountain bike just yet. There was a crew at the finish line with hoses to rinse the water off the bikes and the cyclists, so I managed to get most of the mud off me. Jane finished right after me, and we shared stories about the challenging ride. She had gone off the course several times and had gotten a lot of scrapes. Her sister Judy finished ahead of us and was already celebrating her place in the top 20. It was already cold and we all wrapped ourselves in foil blankets to keep warm. There were several vans parked there. Many racers had vans, and knowing what to expect from this event, they brought them to clean up afterward before the trip home. And Jane pulled me by the hand toward one of the larger vans. "Did you bring a change of clothes?" Yeah." I looked toward my car. "Well, go get your stuff." I walked over to my car, pulled out my bag, and put my bike on the rack. I didn't even bother locking it, as it was one of the cheapest bikes out there and it was unlikely anyone would take it. I've realized over the past few months that true cycling fanatics spend thousands of dollars on expensive bikes without blinking an eye. Some of these people would rather go without food than lose a top-of-the-line bike. And they were about the same age as us and offered to let us come into their van and wash up. They told us that the water tank was almost full, so go ahead and take a shower. When we got inside, it was warm. We took off our shoes and socks and I looked around, thinking it was really nice. Jane walked to the back of the van and opened the door to the bathroom. As I pulled out clean clothes, she said, "Come here, John." It just so happened that we bathed together to save water. Later, we quickly gathered our dirty clothes and went outside to the smirking looks of the couple who owned the van. The look he gave me said it all. "You're lucky," and "what the hell," all combined into one knowing look. What he actually said was, "I hope you enjoyed the shower." I just nodded and replied, "Thank you very much." It was announced that there was going to be an informal meeting for food at a pub nearby, and that anyone who could was welcome to join. I looked at Jane, and she looked at me and said, "We'll be there." After making sure all my gear was secured and stowed, I got in the car thinking to myself, what the hell just happened? I exhaled and realized that I had just had fun with one of the few women in my life that I was truly mesmerized by. Andrea was the original, but in the heat of the moment with Jane, I hadn't given her much thought. I reached the pub and walked inside. The place was already starting to fill up with people, and they were loudly exchanging war stories about their trip today. The stories of falls were laughed at the most as people showed off their, in some cases still bleeding, arms, legs, and faces. My cell phone was off, so I decided to turn it on and send Andrea a text to let her know I had stopped to eat before heading home. I would most likely be back pretty late, and for her to put the kids to bed and not wait for me. She replied good, and asked how I did in the race. I told her I finished the race and sent her a picture of the scratch on my leg. In response, she sent the unhappy face emoji and said, "Ride safe." After eating and drinking 2 Cokes, I decided it was time to hit the road. Nearby was Jane, who looked around and realized Judy had left her. She asked if I could give her a ride home. On the way, Jane wanted to know more about Andrea. I didn't know where her questions would lead at that point, but I also realized I had little to lose by talking about my life. We got to talking. We both talked about our lives. I told her about my 3 daughters, about how they were the most important things in my life, but I also told her that last year I realized that my life was passing me by and that I needed to do something for myself. That's why I took up bicycling and kayaking. I needed to get outside, work up a 7th sweat doing something other than yard work, and challenge myself. I avoided talking about Andrea as much as possible. The last thing I wanted to talk about was my wife being entertained by some other guy on Thursday afternoons. Pulling up to Jane's house, I got out of the car and took her bike off the rack. She grabbed her bag from the back seat and stood looking at me. "Do you want to come in?" I knew what would happen if I went in. In that second, I wanted it more than anything in the world. After what seemed like an hour but was only a few seconds, I nodded yes. Without turning her head, she pointed to the right and said, "Park over there." Week 34. Andrea. My Thursday classes continue. I am really enjoying the couple hours I spend with Rob. I try my best not to let my indulgence with him affect the rest of my life. I try to be a good mother and a good wife. I love my children, and I love my husband. He tries very hard to keep his family together. In the last few weeks, I have noticed that John has changed a little bit. It's imperceptible, but it's there. I didn't notice anything about a month ago, and I wouldn't have noticed if it weren't for my mental checklist that I go through after interacting with Rob and make sure no traces of communication with him are left behind. I started to notice some similarities. John is a very serious guy. He is always laser-like focused on his goals and rarely gets distracted. Because of his seriousness, it's sometimes hard to get him to be relaxed and carefree. He really is like that, but very reserved. The wild and crazy side of his character comes out infrequently and only in circumstances he sees fit. So my girls are always trying to make him laugh with silly jokes and antics. John laughs at them, but the girls know that their daddy is a pretty serious man. But lately, John has been smiling a lot more often, joking around with the kids and trying to pull pranks on them. The girls love it. So, what's going on? John spent most of the summer and fall biking and kayaking, but right now the weather isn't cooperating with either of those activities. He still gets up early in the morning and runs for an hour. Does it? Does it make him happier? Our level of intimacy was, less than I'd like. What's going on? Oh, shit? I just realized. He's found another woman who gives him what he thinks he's missing with me. Damn. Week 36. John. I had some time this afternoon and planned to meet Jane at a diner near my office. We regularly go there for a quick bite to eat and then go to her apartment. When we spend time together, it's the highlight of my day. I hate to say it, but I can see that Andrea enjoys her weekly meetings with her boyfriend. No wonder she comes home happy. I know I come home happy too. So we're even. We both get what we want. I wonder how long this will last, because at some point Jane will get tired of me and want to move on to a man who can make a commitment. And I can't blame her. Just look at her. She's gorgeous, very fit, and just plain classy. This woman has it all. Week 40. Andrea. It's not long until Thanksgiving and seeing my family, which is to say my parents. They live about an hour away from here, and we see them quite often. Thanksgiving and Christmas are the 2 times of the year that the girls enjoy their grandparents. They are spoiled with all the treats and sweets they can handle. John has been noticeably happier lately than he has been in the last couple years. He hardly ever touches me unless the girls are around. John is no longer the gentle and caring person he used to be. But I promised John that I would never say no to him. Is this the kind of marriage I want? Have I screwed things up to the point where the man I love is doing nothing with me? Maybe Rob was a bad idea after all. Maybe that itch I need to scratch needs to be scratched by John. I have some things to figure out. I hope I'm not too late to figure it all out. Week 43. Jane. I love the time I spend with John. He makes me feel like the only woman on the planet. We spend a couple hours together and then go back to work and our lives. I know he has a wife and kids, and I respect that he has to do what is best for them and for him. I control my expectations in my relationship with John. I tell myself that I shouldn't let this relationship go beyond entertaining, and so far I haven't. I'm just not sure how long it will last, for either of us. Week 48. Andrea. Christmas has been a busy time. All the usual things the kids love about Christmas meant we took time to spend time with family and do the things that make us who we are. Lots of food, laughter, and winter activities. We went ice skating and skiing. We watched lots of movies and enjoyed leisurely days. Both John and I took a few days off from work. I made an effort to mend my relationship with John. We had been estranged since the spring when I told him about my weekly classes with Rob. I tried to hold hands with him at every opportunity. He would hold my hand for a few seconds and then slowly lower it. I told him I wanted to talk to him about us. 2 nights later, after the girls went to bed, John surprised me by pouring me a glass of wine and taking a rare beer for himself. He had rarely consumed alcohol in recent months. Andrea, I have a question for you. It's been bugging me ever since you told me about your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend, honey. He's just a man who does something for me once a week to fulfill a need I have. John took a sip of his drink. He said in a very quiet and somber voice, "So tell me, how have I let you down? What does he do for you that I don't or can't do? What makes you want to have fun with another man?" He asks the hard questions. John continued, looking me straight in the eye. What need do you have that I can't fulfill? Damn, what the hell am I supposed to tell my husband? I don't even know why I do what I do. It's just been creeping up on me for a long time. I started out wanting to have fun with you, but it was happening during the day when we were both at work and there was no way the itch would go away. I looked back and forth at the floor, the table, and the ceiling, trying to find the right answer to tell my husband that what I was doing with Rob had nothing to do with him and was not a judgment on him. I'd come home and there were the girls and all the chores we had to do. By the time we put the girls to bed, one of us still had a lot of work to do. Something kept getting in the way. I felt like I was having a nervous breakdown. I took a sip of wine and looked at John's face. I could see that he was in pain. John took a small sip. Andrea, I have to tell you that even though you say this has nothing to do with me, I feel like it has everything to do with me. No, darling, you haven't let me down in any way. You are a wonderful husband. So why do I feel otherwise? Why do you feel you have to have fun with this guy to feel satisfied, contented, happy? I was quickly digging my own grave. When I started working with Rob, I tried to make sure that this part of my life was well insulated from family life. Rob realizes that what we do is just casual, and that there is no commitment between us. We use protection and get tested to make sure we don't have anything that could threaten each other or my husband. Dating time is limited to once a week and lasts about 2 hours. But at the end of those 2 hours, I leave with a sense of fulfillment that is passed on to my husband. I can be a better wife to him. I am happy with the feelings that Rob is able to give me. I am a happier wife. I realize that everything is falling apart. My carefully constructed life was falling apart right here and in this moment. And then John threw me a lifeline. I don't own you. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you that what you do in the long run has consequences. Consequences for you, me, and the girls. I can't force you to end your relationship with this man. I can only tell you that I will do what I have to do to survive. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to get divorced, live apart, or live like we're just friends under the same roof. I want my wife. He took another sip of beer. I want you back, all of you, but I'm willing to take whatever I can get. So if you plan to keep spending time with him on Thursdays, well, I'll have to adjust and deal with it. Wow, I dodged that bullet. But what John didn't tell me was that he had a plan too. A plan that would seriously affect my plans. John, Andrea and I had a hard conversation about our marriage. I wanted to know what the hell was going on in her head that made her need to have fun with another man. How had I failed her as a husband and lover? What had I failed to do for her? What have I failed to see? Am I really that ignorant? I guess I am. I also wanted to tell her that her actions could have consequences, but at the same time, I didn't want to threaten my own wife with something I had no intention of doing. Divorce, separation, It would look like I was giving her an ultimatum. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted Andrea to change because that's what she wanted. I couldn't tell her she had to change. I couldn't tell her she had to stop having fun on Thursdays with another man or else. It wouldn't work. She had to want to do it on her own. I went back to our relationship agreement. I was almost going to tell her that I was also getting something she couldn't give me. I decided I needed something different too. I relished the opportunity to have a relationship with another woman who didn't judge me. I didn't know how long it would last, but at that very moment I was content to know Jane as more than just a cycling friend. She had become someone with whom I could share intimacy. Maybe only for a few hours a week, but it was certainly something I found fulfilling for me. If it worked for Andrea, it would work for me. Week 52. John, it's been a year since the great revelation, that's what I call it. It's been a year since my marriage changed. Not for the better, of course, but it has changed. The change wasn't my fault, well, not all of it. Some of it was because of Andrea, and then, later, some of it was because of me. Andrea revealed her secret lover to me, but I didn't reveal my secret lover to her. I guess there was a bit of revenge involved. I was sad that she had to have a lover at all. It suggested that I wasn't a good enough husband to satisfy my wife. She swore she had nothing to do with me, but I know she did. She may be trying to save my feelings, but really she's just avoiding the consequences. It took a few months and the advice of several other people for me to realize that for my own survival, I needed to make some changes in my personal life. This was separate from Andrea and the girls. I started doing some things just for myself. I still had all the family obligations and that didn't change, but I started making time for things that made me feel good about myself. I bought a mountain bike and joined a cycling club. I bought a kayak and started taking kayaking and whitewater paddling lessons. I started running more. I lost a few pounds off my average weight and built muscle in my legs and upper body. I even considered taking up boxing as a way to de-stress, but I decided I would start with running and biking and work my way up. And it worked. I also met a man who was also into cycling and we became friends. We developed a relationship that I would call friends of interest. We see each other at bike meets almost every week in nice weather, and on another day of the week we get together for lunch and stop by her condo for a couple hours. She has helped me deal with Andrea in ways I can't even explain. Andrea says her Thursday nights with her lover make her a better wife. Well, my time with Jane makes me a better man. I'm still not sure that makes me a better husband. I think of it as, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or what has been a popular phrase this year, quid pro quo. Yeah, that's it. Jane. Hi. I have to tell you that a year or so ago, I would never have thought I would be in any kind of relationship with a married man. I mean, only incredibly stupid women get involved with married men. Women who are looking for trouble of the worst kind. We've all heard stories of women who have affairs with married men and then dump them when the woman gets too serious and expects the man to leave his wife. Really, would anyone with a brain expect that to happen? Sometimes they do, but it's rare. So the best policy for single women is to avoid married men. But it doesn't always happen that way. Every once in a while, one of them slips through your defenses and before you know it, you find yourself in a relationship with him. You think, damn, how did that happen? But then you continue the relationship. But you set boundaries for yourself. You try to think like an adult and tell yourself that you won't let him go down that road where you think he's something more. Friends with benefits. It's the order of the day these days. But after a while, when you get comfortable with him and start giving him nicknames like honey, sweetie, darling, love, cutie, babe, and a host of other names your imagination can come up with, you become reckless with your emotions. You start thinking about longer timelines and what-ifs. You start making plans that you can't actually realize in any concrete sense. You start fooling yourself. But then you come back to the here and now and remember that you are the other woman. You are the woman he didn't promise to love, honor, and cherish until death do you part, or until the court orders otherwise. But then you also remember why you got involved with him. That his wife is getting it on the side with some young guy. So who's fooling who? Am I fooling myself, or is his wife fooling herself? Is she acting even stupider by jeopardizing her marriage to him? Is she giving him away? Is she saying to him and others, I'm starting to get out of this marriage? The marriage, at least with him, has not turned out to be what she expected it to be. The life she wanted has not become a reality for her. Family, work, and living was not what she expected her life to be. Where was her life? Wait a minute. Some people want that kind of life. Some people want a trivial family and the assurance that eventually there will be children who will look to you for life, freedom, and happiness. You are the parent, the leader, the example setter. You are the one the family will come to for all the things that define what a family is. You are the stability that is the foundation of the family. The patriarch or matriarch. Parent, mother, father. You are the one the children will come to for the rest of their lives. What could be better than that? I want that. I am young, healthy, smart, and talented. I have a lot of energy, I have a strong work ethic, and a very good sense of right and wrong. I may be too loyal at times, and I like the certainty of tomorrow. I like the idea of normality, of regularity in my life. I want to come home to the people who depend on me, but I also want to teach them to be independent. My mother and father taught me that. It was a lesson well learned, but lately, I've been feeling the need for closeness, the closeness of my own family. I want a child, my own. It's time. Week 60. John. Bicycling season is finally here. I can't wait to get out into nature, work hard, sweat, get dirty, and have fun. Andrea and I are still manage to be a couple. Her career in real estate keeps her busy, and she continues to rave about how great it is to be in the real estate business. Apparently, she loves her job. She meets with clients at all hours of the day and night. I have long since switched to the kids and spend evenings and weekends with them. We keep them busy with their sports and art, and I swear my car engine rarely cools down before 10 p.m. When the girls are in bed, I finish some of my chores, clean the house, load the dishwasher, take a shower, and plop into bed. So now Andrea and I are spending less and less time with each other. I know she's still having fun with her boyfriend from Thursday, Rob, or whatever his name is. There's nothing I can do about it. If I do take action, my daughters have the most to lose, and then me. But they see so little of their mother now, what could be different? Even if I file for divorce, she still works all hours of the day and night, and I remain the primary caregiver. Jane and I are still seeing each other. She's an amazing woman. What the hell am I supposed to do? That question keeps running through my head. I need to make sense of it all. Week 63. John. My boss met with me and told me about a new company project he wants me to be involved in. It would mean traveling for 2 or 3 days every 2 weeks for the next few months. I went home and told Andrea about the new project, and her reaction was kind of indifferent. I mentioned that it was a possible path to a promotion within the company if I was up to the task. She only nodded her head and continued to do her business at her laptop. I don't think she was paying attention. After dinner, on the way to one of the girls' basketball practice, I told them that I might be away from work for a night or two every now and then. You guys are going to have to help your mom more on those nights. You know, clean the kitchen and make sure you do your homework. And not staying up any longer than usual. They all laughed a little at that remark. My kids are good, and I knew they could be counted on to help and do their part. My oldest, Diane, who is now 12 and looks 32, said during our conversation, "Daddy, does this mean Mom will be hiring babysitters to stay with us?" I thought for a second. She'll probably have to do that from time to time because of her job, but I hope she doesn't have to do it very often. My daughter is a very smart girl and quickly replied, "Well, it's not like we see her that often." This comment from a 12-year-old girl hit me hard. She realized that she doesn't see her mother much. It wasn't that she had hooked up with this what's-his-name on Thursday afternoon. It was that she was giving her full attention to the real estate business and how he was running it. In my hind mind, I knew I had to figure out what to do. At the very least, I decided that I needed to talk to Andrea and make sure she had a good understanding of what the next few months meant for her. John. My conversation with Andrea went about as well as expected. She agreed that my job requirements would be a good career opportunity for me, and that she would of course take over all the childcare. She looked at me with an amazed expression on her face. "Don't you think I know how to take care of my own children?" I'm not claiming that at all. I was a little annoyed by her tone. I'm just trying to say that you need to be willing to spend a little more time with your kids on the nights I won't be home. That's all there is to it. Just know that I'm gone. I'll let you know my plans ahead of time and we can organize any help we need. I continued. I know you have everything scheduled, but sometimes you'll have to reschedule or postpone some things, that's all. Andrea just nodded at me and went back to her cell phone and the message or email she was doing. That was the end of it. Week 68. John, I want to share a few important things with you. I am deep into my new project, and although it is a daunting task, I know that if I focus on the engineering and technology part of it, I can do it and do it well. I've been meeting with my bank's personal accounts representative and we've been discussing all the usual things we do twice a year. I was trying to pay off my mortgage faster than the payment schedule required. This would save a lot of interest in the long run. Leanne mentioned that our other account is doing very well and the balance is solid. I wasn't quite sure which account she was talking about. I assumed it was our investment account that I opened 3 years ago. I put money in it every month and invest it in the stock markets. She looked at me cheerfully and said it was the account we put bonus checks in. My brain flipped over trying to figure out what the hell she was talking about. She reminded me that this is the account that Andrea makes deposits into. Not regularly and never for the same amount, but over the past 3 years it had accumulated and now the account had over $180,000. And then it hit me like a tractor trailer. My mouth dropped open as I realized Andrea was trying to hide the money from me. The long hours of work should have hidden the fact that a significant portion of her commissions were being deposited into her secret account. Leanne was looking at her computer, and suddenly her eyes widened as she realized that my name was nowhere to be found on that account, and that she had just violated some banking rule regarding client confidentiality. A "screw you" expression appeared on her face. She quickly changed the subject and said that the bank would be happy to lower my mortgage rate another 0.5%, given how much they valued me as a customer. I realized what was being said. Say nothing about Leanne's blunder and save some more money. I was fine with that. Week 70. John. I'm back to the cycling season and enjoying it even more. I splurged on a new, more high-tech bike. It's a Red Trek Pro Caliber, lighter than my other bike and ready for both trails and roads. With it, my rides will be taken to a new level. I exercise to increase my endurance and run up to 10 miles a day. I get up at 5 a.m. and run, then shower, and head to work after taking the girls to school. My old Subaru was also swapped out for a new one that is built and equipped for off-road driving. The aggressive tires, black rims, and dark green paint job, and a few other elements make it a really good adventure vehicle. This season, Jane and Judy are bicycling again. Judy and her boyfriend have broken up. He moved to another part of the country, somewhere in California, to take care of his job and another girl he's in a relationship with. Judy is no worse for it and seems happy. Jane is a different story. She and I are still FWB and still have fun. But she is changing, and very subtly at that. Andrea is changing too, but in a different way, if that makes any sense. I'll try to explain as best as I can. I'm not a psychiatrist, but the last year has taught me to be very observant of people. I'm an engineer, and we, all of us combined, are often accused of not being good at people. We're good with machines and technical matters, but when it comes to figuring out human psychology and what makes people who they are, well, let's just say we often miss the obvious. That's why Andrea could be fiddling with her Thursday boy toy, and I wouldn't notice until the evidence fell out of her purse. I wasn't watching anything. I didn't notice the little things about my wife that might have tipped me off that something was going on. But now that I was a little more educated, I began to notice a few things. For one thing, I noticed that Jane was acting much more intimate. It was about the level of intimacy that the couple shared. It was the little things. She now called me honey more often than she called me by my first name. She knew me well enough to know what dishes I liked, and if we were meeting at a cafe or a restaurant, she might even order one of my favorite dishes for me before I even got there. She knows I drink Diet Coke and I like a beer every now and then, usually an IPA. She knows how much I weigh and what my clothing size is. She knows I like both pop music and classical. I've noticed that Jane is increasingly referring to other people and their families. One weekend when I was with the girls, we went to an RV show. Jane knew I was taking the girls there and asked if she could join us. We had a great time looking at the campers and RVs, and it gave Jane a chance to get to know my daughters. Afterward, we went to a fast food place, and the girls peppered her with questions. I told them that Jane and I met at the bicycling club I belong to. I told them that she is a very good cyclist and much faster than their father. They laughed at that. My oldest, Diane, even said that their mom would never ride a mountain bike on dirt trails. That remark brought a tiny smirk to Jane's face. Almost imperceptible, but there it was. It was more of a nope than anything else. On the way home, Diane remarked that Jane seemed like a very nice person. I mentioned earlier that I could sense Andrea changing, and in a very subtle way. She was spending more and more time at work and booking new clients, much more than was possible. She hired an assistant, a new agent, and put her in charge of most of the paperwork. Andrea thus had more time to meet people and presumably show properties. She spent less and less time with me and the girls. She worked most evenings and most of every weekend. Our intimacy was practically nil. She rarely had dinner with her family. She would often come home late, shower, make herself a drink, and then sit down at her laptop to do some more work. Several times I tried to talk to her, but she was always distracted by her phone or laptop. To see if she was listening to me at all, I told her that I had booked a 3-week vacation for all of us in Europe this summer. She nodded and said, "That's great." That's when I realized it was time to take action. I needed Roy and his expertise again. Week 73. John, I pulled out the relationship agreement that Andrea and I had signed about a year ago. It really was a joke. How can you negotiate a marriage that has any meaning at all? Now, I think it's almost impossible. I was in love with Andrea when we married, and my love for her grew after each of our daughters were born. I thought I had the world by the tail. I had a near-perfect family and a growing career. We were living well and our future looked quite prosperous. And what happened? Life happened. That's what happened. Did I take Andrea for granted? Did I ignore her to my own detriment? Did I fail her as a husband? Did I get my priorities wrong? Why did things get so screwed up? And the worst part was that my wife wasn't interested in talking to me about our marriage. And when she did talk, she brushed off my concerns, saying that she loved me and the kids and that everything was just fine the way it was. No, things weren't just fine the way they were. If our marriage had been fine, there wouldn't have been Thursday afternoon scratch and scratch sessions with, what's his name? There wouldn't be this huge elephant in the corner of our marriage. I decided to go and see Roy. He knew what to do, or at least had a better understanding of what I should do. I took a copy of the relationship agreement with me. When I arrived at Roy's office, he greeted me with his usual warmth, that is, his usual very serious expression. Even his handshake tries to convey confidence, but I'm not sure the man ever smiles at all. "So, how's it going, John?" I sat down. "Well, where do I start? It's been worse and better." The last time we talked was over a year ago when Andrea and I made that relationship agreement. I picked it up to show it to him. He nodded, saying, and held out his copy. I should have known better. Everything was going pretty much the same as before. I mean, she's still seeing some other man once a week, and I'm seeing a woman once a week. She's become a very good friend of mine. I see, was Roy's reaction to my opening statement. But did he really see it? Things in my life have gotten more complicated. I feel like Andrea and I are growing apart. She's become more aloof and preoccupied than ever. It's hard to talk to her, even when she's at home. She's working more hours than ever, and a few weeks ago I discovered that she's putting money into a secret account. There's probably over $250,000 in there. What the hell does all this mean? I knew the answer to my own question, but I needed to hear it from someone who had dealt with similar cases in the past. Well, John, this whole thing is really disturbing. I think it's time to bring in someone to help answer some of your questions. I have a very experienced investigator who can help you get information that will help you make a decision. With those words, he went to his phone, summoned an assistant, and asked her to call Bob. A few minutes later, the phone buzzed. Roy answered it and talked to his man, Bob, about the surveillance work. After a couple of nopes, Roy turned to me and said, "He'll be here in about 10 minutes. After Bob walked in and introductions were made, Bob explained what he did for a living. He also explained that he had been working with Roy for several years, as well as many other attorneys. He also explained how much it would cost to find the information I needed. All in all, I wanted to know what the hell Andrea was up to. I wanted more information about her extramarital life, her secret bank account, and what it was for. Bob was taking notes, lots of notes, and I could see he was developing a plan. He told me that everything I wanted to know could be found out. He had the ability to discreetly find information that many of us take for granted, protected from prying eyes. I, on the other hand, just wanted to know what the hell my wife was doing. On the other hand, I assumed she would want to know what I know about her and what I plan to do. Damn, this is getting complicated and ridiculous. I wrote a check to Bob as a prepayment, and after a few handshakes, I left to ponder my future. Week 75. 2 agonizing weeks passed, and finally Roy called to say that Bob had a report he wanted to share with me. We set up a time the next day to analyze the information he had managed to find, dig up, etc. All night my gut was in a knot. I couldn't focus on much, and my girls reminded me for the 10th time that they needed help with their homework. I shook my head and struggled to do what I had to do. Andrea, as usual, wasn't home. The next day, I rushed to Roy's office to see what Bob had to tell me. After greetings, we got to the reason for the meeting. Well, John, I've been busy with what you asked for the last time we met. I must say that your wife is a very busy woman. I'll get right to the main point. She's seeing 2 different men. She meets with each of them once or twice a week, without any specific schedule that I could find, and spends a couple hours with them at a time. She usually meets both men at the same address. What the hell? He has more. I found out at the Land and Property Registry that she owns an apartment in an apartment building near her office. She bought it almost 2 years ago and has just about paid it off. She has a bank account at that bank you told me about with a current balance of $321,000. She put 75% of her commissions from being a real estate agent into it. She has done a lot of transactions over the last 3 years, mostly commercial, and judging by her sales, she is the most profitable agent in the company. They offered her a partnership, but she declined. We can't find a reason why she refused. Bob took a sip of water before continuing. I have the names and biographies of the 2 men she is dating. They're most likely the latest in her history with other men. Both men live in the city. One is married and has a family, and the other is single. I have a feeling that your wife is planning some sort of move in the next few months. Although I don't have any specific information about her plans, it sounds like she is preparing for something. A hidden apartment and hidden money are all signs that a person is planning a big change. When she plans to reveal this to you, I don't know. It could be soon, in a few months or years, or it could be never. With those words, he looked at me and handed me a folder with the written report and other information he had managed to gather. Roy said, "Good job, Bob. If we need anything else, I'll call you." With those words, Bob left us. I sat stunned that Andrea had expanded her extramarital affairs to 2 men. What the hell am I supposed to do, Roy? I looked at him, as if my life had taken another turn on the road to hell. Roy looked at me with a studying expression on his face that said he was probably going to offer to prepare the divorce papers. After some discussion, we came to the conclusion that divorce was probably coming, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. I still had 3 daughters to worry about, and I wanted to make sure that after the divorce or separation, they would be in my full custody. That was non-negotiable. Roy exhaled deeply and opened his mouth to offer his advice. John, what do you want to do? That's it? You have a lot to think about. I recommend you ponder it for a few days. There's no rush. If Andrea does something drastic, we can file for divorce and have it delivered to her in a matter of hours. Unless you have a major change, I know exactly what you want, and in fact, the paperwork has already been drawn up. All you have to do is call me, and in a few hours the poop will hit the propeller. Roy even smiled as he said the last sentence. I nodded my head, thanked him, and left the office. Indeed, I had a lot to think about. For the next 3 days, I couldn't think about anything else. All the while I was wondering what Andrea was really up to, I watched her closely to see if there was any difference in her behavior. She still greeted me with the same kiss and still cared for the girls as she always did. There was nothing to explain the fact that she had bought a hidden apartment downtown. I figured she wanted to set up some sort of love nest there, a place where she could hide her activities from me. We still had a relationship agreement. Sure, we hadn't talked about it in months, but I guess that meant she had the right to have a lover. That I had agreed to it. It also meant that I had the right to have a lover, and that Andrea agreed to it. So what was the bottom line? Week 83. Jane. Okay, this is new. I stopped taking birth control pills a couple months ago when I made the decision that I wanted a baby in my life. I really want the baby to have a husband and a father, but for now, I'll just have to settle for a baby. And a husband, I think, will come along when all the dust settles. I'm not stupid, and I have resources available to me in the legal world. I also have many colleagues who can provide me with other resources when I need them. One such resource was able to let me know that John had contacted a divorce attorney some time ago and had done some preliminary work on a plan for a potential divorce between John and his wife, Andrea. I made some inquiries about Andrea and soon became aware of what she was doing. I knew that she had bought a place downtown, not far from her office. I knew she paid cash for the place, which meant she had stashed the money away from John. I knew it was the work of a woman planning to ambush her husband. That's what people did to hide their true intentions. I also knew that John would be the father of my child. He knows I want a child. He knows I want him to be the father. I want this man in my bed for more than just a few hours at a time. I want him there all the time. I don't want to share him with another woman, a woman who wants more than one man in her life to fulfill her needs. I can't understand why she would want that. John is the whole man. He's already the father of her children. I can't get enough of him. He's smart, talented, and loves children. He loves me. I love him. Week 85. Andrea. Why can't John accept that I need more than he does? I plan to continue to be a good wife to him and mother to our children, but I need more than what one man can give. I don't know how to explain it. It's a craving that needs to be satisfied for me to be happy. If I am not getting my craving satisfied, if my itch is not addressed, then my universe is not spinning the way it should. When my needs are met, I function at a much higher level. My brain makes decisions quickly. I make a hell of a lot of money. The small space I bought downtown was supposed to give me a more secure place to entertain myself while I get my needs met with Rob and Tom. Oh yes, I forgot to mention that Tom is also one of my daytime pleasures. Tom is a new real estate agent at our company and just moved into the neighborhood. I let him stay with me downtown until he gets his own place. John and the girls see no difference in me. I am still his wife and their mother. I still love John, and I know he loves me, and that if I can get my other needs met in a way that doesn't affect my family. John understands this. He and I have a written agreement. We've worked out the logistics of it all. I get my pleasure and he gets his. I'm not sure he's seeing anyone. With our busy schedules, we hardly get a chance to talk during the week. If he is seeing another woman, it's better for both of us. I get mine, he gets his, and we keep busy with our daughters. And someday I will give it all up and we will be just for each other. I know it will be. John understands. I think. Week 92. Jane. The last few mornings I've been waking up and not feeling well. I usually love the morning cup of coffee I start my day with, but lately the coffee has been dropping and then immediately picking up. I knew what that meant. So on my way home from work, I stopped by the local pharmacy and bought a test kit. It would confirm what I already knew. I called John and told him I was going to take the test and wanted him to come over. He showed up at my door after dinner, surprisingly, with his 3 daughters in his arms. I suppose it was only fitting that his children be present at the opening of the test to see if they had a half-brother or sister. John's daughters were not unfamiliar to me. We had done many events together over the past year. I knew them well enough to be aware of what they were doing and how they were doing in school. John's oldest daughter, Diane, was, in my estimation, much more mature than her 12 years. She was intelligent and had the ability to see and understand what was going on in her father's and mother's lives. She was a keen observer and knew that her family was slowly changing and that something important was being prepared for all of them. After the girls were settled in the kitchen, I took John's hand and we headed to the bathroom next to my bedroom. I pulled out the test kit and said, "So, the moment of truth." We both looked at each other and I sat on the toilet and peed on the test strip. After washing my hands, I took a piece of white plastic and held it out to John. "Well, what does it say?" John stared for a few seconds and then said, "It says here that you and I are going to be parents. Congratulations, Mom." John. Jane and I went to her doctor and she confirmed that Jane was indeed pregnant. She estimated the due date to be about 6 weeks. That was the signal for me to get in shape and do some necessary things. It was something that had been a long time coming, but was now very necessary. Week 94. John. Bob. The investigator briefed me on what Andrea was doing with her lovers. There was no change in her behavior. It was time to act. I knew where her apartment was located and did a reconnaissance to figure out how to get in there, unnoticed. She had an underground parking garage, and to get into the building and into the parking lot, I needed key fobs. I took the direct route, no tricks. I walked up to the building and waited for her to pull up. I gave her time to park and go up to my unit. I walked to the front door and flipped through the directory until I found her name. It was listed as A. Layton. She was using her maiden name. I dialed the phone and waited for an answer. It took a few minutes, but a man answered me. Hello. I'm looking for Andrea Stewart. Ah, there's no one here by that name. No. Then how about Andrea Layton? Ah. Just tell her it's her husband. I'm John Stewart, in case you don't know. She's the mother of my 3 daughters. My frustration level was skyrocketing, and I had to force myself to stay calm and not do or say anything that would make things worse. A whisper was heard in the background, and a loud and quite distinct "oh damn" was heard. Just put her on the phone, or intercom, or whatever the hell it is. Another delay followed, and finally Andrea spoke. John, what are you doing here? Never mind, Andrea, just open the door so I can come over and we can talk. It took a minute, but finally the door buzzed open. I took the elevator to her floor and started looking for her number. I got to it and knocked on the door. I heard some muffled voices and figured she was trying to get dressed and find a way out of the upcoming confrontation. Finally, the door opened. I was greeted by a young man with very large eyes. He glared at me, clearly fearing that I had aggressive intentions. Don't worry, I'm not here to do anything to you. I want to talk to my wife, and it would be better if you weren't here. So why don't you go somewhere else for a while? I'm sure she'll call you when you can come back. The man looked at Andrea, and she replied, That's okay, Tom. Go and get some coffee. I'll call you. He looked at me with a concerned expression on his face, took his jacket, and left the apartment. I walked in and looked around the living room. After a few seconds, I pointed with my right hand. Nice place. Andrea looked at me like she was the cat that ate the canary. The look of guilt on her face told me pretty much everything I wanted to know. Do you have anything to drink? She finally nodded. I said, Why don't you pour yourself something and I'll have a glass of ice water, please? She looked at my left hand like there was a bomb or a big gun in it. I was holding a large envelope. In that envelope was our future. I took off my jacket, hung it on the back of a chair, and sat down. Andrea went to the kitchen to get the wine, and I could hear ice being put in the glass and then the faucet running. She came back and handed me a glass of water. Honey, why did you come here? Being here won't do you any good. I looked at her with a really expression. You know why I'm here. Stop fooling yourself that you can be married to me, have a family and 2 lovers, all at the same time, and there will be no consequences. You're not that uninformed. She took a sip, or rather a gulp, of her wine. I looked her straight in the eye. She became visibly uncomfortable and took a long look at the table. The silence in the room was deafening. Finally, she spoke. What's in the envelope? I, like my inner Roy, looked at Andrea with the sternest expression on my face. I wanted her to be really scared right now. You really disappointed me. I expected more. You took me for a fool. Last year I gave you what you wanted. I let you have a boyfriend on the side. I looked the other way. I didn't do anything to jeopardize our family life. I got to the point where I thought that eventually you'd get it out of your head and we'd be a normal family again. But, it didn't go that far. You decided that I wasn't the husband you wanted. That our married life isn't what you want. Andrea interrupted me. No, honey, that's not true at all. Come on, that's total bullshit, and you should know better than to try to sell that story. I was getting worked up. If it's not it at all, then what is this place? Tell me. Andrea looked down at her hands. And then I find out that you're adding to your secret bank account. At those words, her head popped up like a drawer. How did you find out about that? I have friends at the bank, you know. She stammered. It was a fund for us to retire and for the girls' education. I threw an incredulous look at her, letting her know that what she was trying to sell was utter nonsense. Oh, please, be honest with me. You fully intend to hide the money from me. You have a different life here, with your boyfriend and your itchy friends, and it seems to me that you fully intend to run away from your family. We hardly ever see you at home. You come and go at odd hours, and I can guess why. The girls never see you. They ask me where you've been. The look on Andrea's face spoke for itself. She was caught. She knew her game was exposed. She knew that the consequences of her decisions were coming back to her. Now her game plan was off, and she instantly made the decision to stop trying to bluff. She knew it would lead to nothing good. She picked up the glass. "What do you want to do, John?" I picked up the envelope I was holding and held it out to her across the table. "Take a look." Andrea stared at it for what seemed like an eternity, then slowly picked it up and stared at it. She unwound the lace that fastened the tabs at the top and pulled out the contents. On top was the relationship agreement we had signed last year. I took a black marker and drew a line across the entire first page, writing "void." She set it aside and then looked at the next document. The petition for a dissolution of marriage. Andrea leaned back in her chair and took a big sip of wine. She looked at me with a deer-in-the-headlights look that said she really couldn't believe this was happening. She looked at the top page for a moment and sighed. I said quietly, "I've asked my attorney to work out a very favorable solution for both of us." I paused for a few seconds. "It's quite clear to me what your intentions are." I left it at that to see what Andrea had to say. She remained silent. I continued, "The girls and I will stay in the house. I want to make sure they aren't affected as much as possible." I sighed heavily. I waited for Andrea to say something, to react somehow, but she only remained silent. We sat at her desk for a few minutes, and finally, I had to push a little. "Say something, damn it. What the hell is going on in your head? Why are you doing this? I realize you don't love me anymore, but at least you love your kids. You should care about them." At this point, I was begging Andrea to say something. I needed to understand exactly what I had done to push her away. How had I failed her as a husband? Nothing. Without looking at me, she said, "I'm not getting a divorce. I still need you and my children. We're still a family. This is all just something I need for a while. It's separate from you and me." I laughed. "Really? You think you can live here with your lovers and pretend we still have a marriage? When was the last time you and I had fun?" Andrea stuttered a little and tried to remember the time. "It was only a few weeks ago." I grimaced. "No, it wasn't. It was a few months ago. It was actually 8 months ago. That's how little time you spend with your family. When was the last time you had time with Tom?" I waited for an answer, but it didn't come. "I bet you were just getting started when I came to your apartment. I bet you had to get dressed before you let me in." No response. "So don't give me any bullshit about you loving me and wanting to keep our family together. Your actions speak louder than words, and you've told me and the girls loud and clear that we're not a priority to you." I took a big sip of water. "So, have your lawyer look over the divorce agreement and talk to my attorney. His card is in the envelope." I stood up to collect myself. "I won't say anything to your parents, so you can tell them whatever you want. Just don't make me look like a villain, or I'll make sure they know the truth." I walked toward the door. "You have a week for your lawyer to talk to my lawyer, and then we'll file the papers with the court." I opened the door to leave. "You can call your boyfriend and tell him he can come back." I closed the door and went home to my daughters. "Andrea, I don't know how John found out about the apartment and my secret bank account. I have been adding to it since I went back to work after our third daughter was born. I added most of my commissions and bonuses to that account, and soon it had over $400,000 in it. At first, I decided to buy the apartment as an investment, and then when Rob and I started hanging out regularly on Thursdays, we started meeting there. It didn't have a lot of furniture, but over time I bought a few things to make the apartment comfortable. When Tom and I started dating and he needed a place to live, I let him move in. I figured it would only be for a few weeks until he found a place to live, but it's been months, and he's still here. John surprised me when he showed up here with that damn envelope with the divorce papers. He wasn't supposed to know about this place. I had my attorney look over the divorce agreement, and she was surprised that John wanted full custody of the girls. Usually in this state, the courts give custody to the mother. She would try to fix this and threatened John with a counteroffer that would essentially bankrupt him after paying off the house, mortgage, alimony, and child support. I did not tell the attorney about my apartment and other financial resources I had. In addition, I downplayed my income by only showing her my official tax returns. I knew that if the firm had to produce my documents, I would be on the losing end. The lawyers scheduled an initial meeting to start negotiations, and then the hard bargaining would begin. In the end, I wanted the divorce to be canceled completely. I wanted to keep my husband and daughters. I wanted my life to stay the same. The lawyer asked me when was the last time I had seen my children. I stammered a bit, trying to answer. She realized I was trying to bluff my way out of a divorce and said that maybe I needed to be prepared to come to some sort of agreement with John. Week 100. John. I haven't seen or spoken to Andrea in weeks. The girls have stopped asking about their mother. I decided it was time to start clearing the house of Andrea's things and those that reminded me of her. I cleaned out her closet, boxing everything up and making sure the pictures of her were put away, including the family photos that hung in the hallway. In one of the boxes with her clothes, I put our wedding album. One night at dinner, the girls and I had a heart-to-heart talk about their mother. I tried my best to let them know as painlessly as possible that I didn't think she was coming home to us. They wanted to know if their mom still loved them. I told them that she does, but that mom has mental health issues that need to be addressed so she can be a good mom again. I know I lied to them, but I needed to shield them from the truth. The truth wouldn't have done them any good. They were little kids, for goodness sake. They were sad, and they cried. Diana, showing her wisdom, talked to me privately and told me that she knew her mother had abandoned them and me and probably wouldn't be coming back. Dad, we're here to help you too. The three of us talked and realized that Mom doesn't want to be with us. If she wanted to, she'd be here. But she hasn't been home for a long time, and that tells us that she doesn't want to be our mom anymore. We also know that you like your friend Jane. Is she going to be our new mom? To say I was surprised by my oldest daughter's maturity is an understatement. She knew what was going on. Maybe not in every detail, but she understood what her mother was trying to say. You won't be upset if I ask Jane to come live with us? Diana looked at me with a smile. Does she make you happy, Daddy? I looked at my very wise beyond her years daughter and nodded my head. Then I think we know what you want to do. You just need to do it. She got off the stool by the kitchen island and headed to her room. Her younger sisters were waiting for her there. Jane. My baby's father called and said he was on his way to see me. When he arrived, he was holding a bouquet of flowers and a pint of my favorite ice cream. This man knows the way to my heart. I took the flowers and put them in a vase, then started opening the ice cream and devouring it. John looked at me with a smirk. Do you want to share a little piece of this ice cream? I smiled back. Take your spoon. He took a full spoonful of the delicious chocolate treat and then asked me a question. So, have you thought about our baby and what you're going to do during your pregnancy and after the baby is born? We talked a bit about the logistics of having a baby, and I told him that since I had decided to get pregnant, it would be up to me to take care of the baby. I am very independent, and I have resources that I can utilize if I need help. I make a good income. Besides, John needed to think about his own children. Yes, I have a plan. You remember that this child is my idea. I will be the one to take care of him or her. I know that, but as the father of your child, our child, I want to be part of that plan. If you'll let me. Of course I'll let you. You don't need an invitation. Good, because I have a plan too. Grab your coat and come with me. I looked at John with a very curious expression on my face, and he took the ice cream jar from my hands, put it in the freezer, put 2 spoons in the sink, and headed for the door. Let's go. We got in his car and drove towards his house. I had been there before and met his daughters a few times, but this time was different. So you're so mysterious. What's going on? You'll see everything in the fullness of time. It was a mystery. We pulled up to his driveway and there were 3 of his girls standing on the front steps. They were all very nicely dressed, and when we got out of the car, they greeted me and opened the front door. What the hell was going on? We made our way into the kitchen where food was laid out for us. cold cuts, bread, cheese, and some coleslaw. There were bottles of water and soft drinks in an ice bucket. The girls looked at me with a tension that implied something was going on that they were clearly involved in. The girls offered food, we made sandwiches, got water, and sat down at the kitchen island. I had a million questions, but I started with, "Girls, how nice, what's the occasion?" Diane, as the eldest, appeared to be the official spokesperson. "We just wanted to make you feel welcome. Dad told us you're having a baby in a few months." "Thank you, and yes, the baby is due in about 6 months. I'll start showing soon." Now all three of them were looking directly at my belly. It was like they could see the baby and were trying to figure out if it was a boy or a girl. It was funny watching them. John cleared his throat. "I asked you to come to our house because I have a question for you. One that you don't have to answer today or even right away." There, now he'd raised my curiosity to new heights. He continued, "The girls and I have discussed this matter at length, and I would like you to move in with us if you want to. We want you to move here, to live here, with us." Oh my God. Was he proposing? My mouth was open, and I needed an urgent drink of water. Ah, ah, ah. Before I could respond, he continued, "Take your time. Think about it. There's no rush. We have a few things to do before you move in. Some remodeling, some furniture to remove, some painting." As he spoke, John walked toward the master bedroom. He opened the door and walked in. I followed him in. The room was completely empty. The door to the dressing room was open, and I saw that it was empty as well. The bathroom was in the same condition. It didn't take much effort to realize that Andrea had disappeared not only from their lives, but also from their home, their abode. The divorce was in full swing. John looked around the empty room. About a month ago, I boxed up all her things and sent them to her apartment. I got rid of the bedroom furniture, gave it to the Salvation Army. "Where are you sleeping?" A stunned expression appeared on my face and amazement in my tone. "In the spare room. The bed is big enough for now. The painters are coming this week, and I need help picking out new furniture for this room. Would you like to help me?" Week 104, Year 2. John. Roy called me today and asked me to stop by his office at my convenience. Lawyers rarely do that, so I got in my car and drove there as fast as I could. I didn't know if this was good news or bad news, but right now any news was welcome. I wanted Andrea's divorce to go through, and the sooner the better. The girls and I had mentally and emotionally broken up a long time ago, and now all I needed was a court stamp on an official document. I had business to attend to. When I arrived at his office, I was immediately ushered inside. His secretary handed me a bottle of water, and I sat down. A smile shone on Roy's face. Damn, I was hoping this was good news. "Well, John, I'm happy to report that negotiations with Andrea's attorney have gone well. She's accepted virtually all of the terms I've set out for her, and I expect her to sign the agreement in the next 2 or 3 days." Oh shit. "Tell me the details, please, Roy. What about my girls?" He cleared his throat, the way he did to emphasize his words. "She's agreed to let you have full custody of the girls." It was like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. I had gotten what I wanted. The rest was just details. "You get to keep the house and its contents, the family's bank accounts and your investment account. It's not big, but it's important. You will receive the sum of $100,000 from Andrea for the girls' education. Andrea will waive any claim to your marital assets. You will not have to give her anything." I'm sure I heard nothing after he told me that she had agreed that I would have custody of the girls. I took a big sip of water. Part of me was thrilled with the news, and part of me was sad that my marriage had gotten to this point. All because of her need to have fun with other men. I was reminded that she viewed me as something less than what she wanted. But I knew she would never be happy with just one man. I knew divorce was inevitable. I looked at Roy and thanked him. I realized the bill for his services would be large, but it would be worth it in the end. When will it be official? When can I start moving on with my life? In about 2 weeks. I have a judge friend who owes me a lot, and she'll expedite the process. Will we all have to appear in court? No, the lawyers will take care of everything. Congratulations, John. You should be very happy about this outcome. Thanks, Roy. Was I happy about this outcome? I'm not sure I was. How could you be happy knowing that your life would take such a sharp turn in the wrong direction? That your wife, who you thought was faithful to you, would turn out to be such a conniving woman and hide her true feelings from you while having 3 children with you? That was the part that struck me. The second part was that I somehow miraculously got back on my feet, got custody of my 3 daughters, and started a new relationship that seemed to be headed in the right direction. I now had a pregnant woman that I loved more and more every day and wanted very much in my life. I had a new beginning. I had a lot of work to do. Andrea met me. My attorney called me and told me that she had made arrangements with John's attorney. She also said I got off cheap. It seems that John's lawyer knew pretty much every detail of my life and was willing to let the judge know what I was up to. My attorney pretty much agreed with everything John wanted and told me that I was lucky to get away with just that. She said she would have the papers delivered to me by courier the next day for me to sign and send back. I did just that. Week 106. Andrea. The courier delivered an envelope from my attorney with a copy of the final judgment of dissolution of marriage. It was now official. I was no longer married to John. Indeed, since I had agreed to him getting full custody of my daughters, I was no longer a mother. A couple days ago, I was driving by my old house, hoping for a glimpse of my family, when an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway next to John's house. I slowed down, saw no one, and kept driving. It dawned on me that I had really screwed up. My inner need for entertainment was ruling my brain to the point where I was ignoring everything that was important in my life. I pushed my family to the back burner. I made my need the thing that drove all my decisions. I'm so stupid. What am I supposed to do now? A week. Whatever. A little over 3 years. Jane. My husband and I have a son. We have another one on the way. Our daughters, yes, they are my daughters now, they call me Mom, are just thrilled to have a baby brother. They patronize him all the time. They fight over who gets to push the stroller when we go for walks. It's so cute to watch. My husband is wonderful. He is everything I ever wanted to see in a husband and more. I can't believe how lucky I am. We sold the house and moved to one that better suited our needs, especially with 5 kids. Remember what is important in your life and pay attention to it. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.